Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. I got to tell you, I spent all week trying to come up with a good French army joke, but I just gave up. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Verdun 1916, Steel Inferno from Fellowship of Simulations.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
In Verdun 1916, Steel Inferno from Fellowship of Simulations, two players take on the roles of either the Germans or the French at the Battle of Verdun, the apocalyptic 1916 battle which saw tremendous casualties and just utter destruction. The game board is a map of the Verdun area. On the board, you have various forts. Along each edge, you have some point values, which mean if the Germans catch them, they'll get points, or if the French get it, they'll get points. There's also various tracks along the side of the board for air superiority, each side's morale, and of course the turn and VP trackers. There's also spots to bring in reinforcements, more on that later. There are also some off-map cards you will use in the full game, and players actually represent their pieces with little blocks. Now you have small little thin rectangular blocks which act as trenches. Then you also have much larger blocks that you stand on their end to represent readied armies available to fight, and then they're on their side, they become exhausted. Now, each side has their own deck of cards. Now, each card kind of has a kind of six marker at the bottom. And depending on if it's filled in or not for a specific game round, means whether or not you can include that card in that game round or not. So you're going to be going each round and seeing which cards you can use for the next round and removing cards that you can't. Now, at the beginning of every round, players can actually look through their decks and pick one card that they definitely want in their hand. They can then go ahead and shuffle the rest of the cards that are appropriate to that round and draw up to a total of 8 cards. Now, over the course of that turn, you can go ahead and you can take actions or you can pass. Now, this is a CDG. Essentially, the way you're playing cards is typically you can play the card for its ability, for the card's event, for the text, or you can play it for its actions. And the actions, of course, are available up in the corner. It kind of says how many actions you can play that card for. Now, most of the cards you will play are barrage. Now, barrage cards are going to allow you to roll a number of dice. You roll the dice, and then you're going to go ahead and check and see if you got any hits. Now, when you play a barrage card for the event, you're going to roll a number of dice. Now, if you have units adjacent to the target zone, then you hit on 4, 5, or 6. Otherwise, you're just going to hit on 5 or 6. Now, if you hit a standing army, you then turn it to you lay it flat. And then if you hit it twice more, you remove it from the game. So you're going to go ahead and knock over your guys first, and then you're going to start eliminating from the game. However, if you do have a trench there, that trench will absorb 1 hit before you move on to the other units. Also, if they're in an area that has a fort, that will also factor into how hits are applied. Now, there are various other card effects. Some cards let you do all sorts of funky things on the board, and some cards are combos. This meaning you play the card and you set it there, and you hope you can get another card within that month that will allow you to trigger it. So you can play a card that will play off that card. For instance, there's a card that triggers with I think it's the Sacred Road, that allows you to just send a ton of reinforcements for the French, right? But these cards will trigger off of each other, and then there's a lot of other cards. You can play cards for air superiority that will move the air superiority to your side, making it easier to hit in artillery barrages. Critically, one thing about an artillery barrage, for every 6 you roll, you get to roll it. You get to roll another die. But if you lose air superiority, you're not going to have that advantage. Now, when you do a barrage, you can also do an infantry assault along with it. You send in your infantry to accompany the barrage. Now, once the barrage is finished, essentially you're going to figure out exactly how that plays out. It is deterministic between the various infantry units there. Now, if the attacker goes in, it inflicts 1 hit per non-exhausted unit going in. The defender, they will go ahead. They'll inflict, I think, 3 hits for non-exhausted units and just 1 hit for an exhausted unit. Now, they may become exhausted because there is a possibility of this infantry assault barrage combination that you may actually take some friendly fire that may exhaust some of your advancing units. So instead of playing the card for its event, you can actually play it for its action points. And the different action points is, for 1 action point, you can place a trench. For 1 action point, you can stand up a unit. You can also spend an action point to designate a space either on the board or on your your reserves to move everything strategically to anywhere on the board you want them to move to. That's strategic movement. You can also do tactical movement. For every tactical movement, for every point you spend, you can move up to 3 units anywhere on the board to an adjacent zone. Now, also, too, you can bring reinforcements into the game. You're placing them, first of all, on the en route. They move to the reserve at the end of your turn. And then for your strategic movement, you can bring them off of the reserve onto the board. Now, the scoring track is a tug of war. And the French want a lower score. That's how they're going to get victory. The Germans want a higher score. That's how they're going to get the victory. So now you will gain points if you destroy enemy units. You get 1 point for every enemy unit you destroy. You gain points for capturing certain geographic areas on the board. You will gain points for that. And you'll factor that every round. You can play certain event cards in certain ways. Certain configurations will give you victory points. But the critical way, one of the critical ways you're gaining victory points here, is forcing your enemy to call for reinforcements. Anytime your enemy actually calls for reinforcements without playing a card that gives kind of a special dispensation, but anytime they just generally play their card to bring reinforcements onto their en route, you get a victory point. Whenever you force your enemy to bring in more troops, that's a victory point for you. So there's a big tug of war there in that, I need troops, but I don't want to give my enemy a victory point. But you don't have any choice. Also, too, in the full game, American entry can provide victory points as well. Now, there's another concept here. Your units need to be in supply, meaning they have to be adjacent to other units, or they have to be able to trace a direct line back to the back of the board. So if ever a unit is surrounded, you're going to place the L1 marker there, and that means they're going to be put on their exhausted side. Then L2, and then you will remove that unit from the game. So players are going back and forth. They are playing cards. They are activating those events. They're conducting barrages and infantry assaults. They are calling for reinforcements. They're strategically and tactically moving units around the board. And they are trying to set up some of those card combos to help them out and gain air superiority. Now, as soon as the German player is able to get to 50 victory points, then he's going to win the scenario immediately. However, if the French can prevent the Germans from achieving that, then they win. Verdun, 1916. Still Inferno. Okay, so Verdun 1916. This is a game that I had seen bouncing around the internet, and I'd heard nothing but good things about it. So I reached out to the good people at Fellowship of Simulations. They sent me this game, and I was really eager to play it. And I sat down with Ray, and we went through this game. And our initial impression was there were some things that were very vague, and the rule book is not great. It's not the worst rule book I've ever read, but it could be better. Things could be clearer, presented in a more straightforward way. That would have been helpful. Having said that, we're playing the game, and very quickly it becomes apparent this is a game it's a relatively light war game, but it's a game that really forces those tough decisions, and no decision is as tough as that one of, do I call for reinforcements and give my opponent a point? That's really scary. And at the beginning, the French kind of have a lot of room to maneuver. You're thinking, oh, well, yeah, we're never going to get up to 50. But that starts ticking, and it seems like it starts going in the Germans' favor fairly quickly. The Germans have a lot of power. Their artillery is a lot more powerful. And really, this is a game of offense and defense. The Germans are just pushing as much as they can. The French are trying as much as they can to hold what they can. And that means reinforcing, right? So that is really cool. And, like any good CDG, you've got that good choice, too, on the cards. Do I play it for the event? Do I play it for the action points? I really need these action points, but the event is really good. Do I want to sacrifice it? Of course, some events, once you play them, they're going to be out of the game. Some you'll be able to play again and again. It's really interesting, and like air power is important because that's really going to mitigate things that happen on the board here. There's just some good, solid choices throughout this game, and that's the mark of any good game is how tough are the choices I'm engaged in. So I really, really enjoyed the game on that level of, as I say, of choice. Really a lot of fun. And I got to admit, too, I love the artwork here. It's very reminiscent of the artwork we saw from The Grizzled, another great World War I game. So it gives you a great aesthetic here of this battle, this war. The game is just awesome. Ray is not a huge war gamer. In fact, I think he says he's played more war games with me in the past few weeks than he ever has. And he was the first one to say, as soon as I asked him what he thought about this game, I'm thinking in the back of my head, I love this game. What does Ray think? And I asked him, and he said, it's excellent. It's excellent. He really enjoyed it. And again, it's those choices you're making, And both sides have these tough decisions, and it's just great. And of course, it's very evocative of the war, that kind of slog. This isn't a war of these massive maneuvers, and it's kind of this just steady trying to wear down attrition, wear the other side down. And it's tough and it's heartbreaking at times, but man, it is engaging. There's more stuff going on here. I certainly didn't cover everything that's going on in this game, but those are the basics. And I just think it's a fantastic war game that I'm very happy to add to my collection. There's absolutely no doubt. I would like to tell everyone, if you're looking for a great two-player war game that's not overly complex, it's a CDG, I think you will really, really enjoy Verdun Still Inferno 1916. Fantastic game. Recommendation for the discriminating gamer for Still Inferno 1916 is Verdun Still Inferno 1916 is buy it. Well, thank you once again for joining us on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history, books on history. I post some of my lectures on there. I would ask you to please check that out. Please subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Also, we'd ask you to leave a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. Now, if you are a fan of the channel and you like the content we bring you here, we would humbly ask you to go ahead and click on the Super Thanks button on this YouTube page and leave a tip. What do French Army generals like to do on Twitter? Retweet! Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. Hello, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show.